this was a HIV resistance kind of a talk. I was just told this afternoon that that happened last month, but we'll go over some things. Hopefully you'll find it useful. You all know this, that antiretrovirals are now recommended for everybody, right? Obviously, there are some people who need them more than others, but in general, our recommendation is, or the recommendation of the experts is to give it regardless of the CD4 count. And things like pregnancy, hepatitis B or HCV co-infection, etc., you speeden up the process. You almost completely disregard the CD4 count. These are the guidelines that Kala was talking about. They came out yesterday on April 8th. Today is the 9th. And they have updated some things. And I think we're going to have to say goodbye to a tripler down the line. We're going to have to say goodbye to our friend Reataz. So long, and thanks for all the fish. They will be leaving us soon. But these are the guidelines. And these are, remember, treatment-naive patients. We are not talking about treatment-experienced patients. But the integrase strand inhibitor, INSTIs, the integrase strand transfer inhibitors based regimens, have really come to the front here. And this is quite amazing, considering that till about 7 years ago, we didn't have a single integrase inhibitor. Raltegravir came out, then elvitegravir came out, and then dolutegravir came out. But now the integrase-based regimens are top of the list. Triumec, you all know what Triumec is? Anybody who doesn't?
Sorry.
Okay, anyway, Triumec is abacavir plus lamivudine plus dolutegravir. So it is epsicom plus dolutegravir. Dolutegravir plus Truvada. And you can see the level of recommendation is to the, Brittany, can you see the mouse also? Can you see the pointer when I move it around? Okay, cool.
And everyone's muted, so if you want to ask a question, I can unmute everyone. It'll just take me a second.
Okay, it'll be nice. I mean, as long as, to make it interactive, but however you want to do it is fine with me. But so Triumec is 1 tablet, dolutegravir plus Truvada will be 2. Stribild, you all know what Stribild is. Stribild is Truvada plus elvitegravir plus cobacistat. Cobacistat is like Norvir. It is a booster, right? And then raltegravir plus Truvada. So this is quite amazing that in 2015, now the guidelines, top 4 regimens are integrase inhibitor-based regimens. And I think there is good reason, because they are relatively safe drugs. There is no safe drug, by the way, but these are relatively safe. They have superb responses, few drug interactions. They are not, sorry, is there a question or is there a comment or no? Okay. And then the PI-based regimen that is top of the list is darunavir, which is Prasista, plus Norvir, plus Truvada. These are the 5 recommended regimens. These are the guidelines yesterday. These are now alternate regimens. Poor Reataz has been relegated to an alternate regimen. A tripla is now alternate. Reataz plus Epsicom is alternate. Sustiva plus Epsicom is alternate. Complera, unfortunately, could never climb its way up, but it's not a bad drug. There are multiple switch studies, and I won't talk about the switch studies. We can if you want to, but anyway. Darunavir plus raltegravir. What do you see different in this? What's, anybody?
Okay, everyone's unmuted.
Let's make this interactive. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there anything different about this?
It doesn't have the Truvada emtricitabine, the Truvada backbone.
You're absolutely right, Heather. This lacks a NRTI. Up until now, we've always said There is something sweet about NRTIs. People have looked at NRTI-free regimens for a long time. But for the first time, they've actually put in the guidelines as alternate regimens darunavir plus raltegravir, with the caveat that you have to have a good reason not to use Truvada. Renal failure, blah, 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 whatever else. Another regimen, look at this regimen now. And I won't show you the slides on these, but these were presented at the last AIDS conference. And there were 4 nucleoside-free regimen studies shown, Gardel, NEAT, and there were 2 others, I forget. And I had slides on them, I took them out. But Kaletra plus 3TC, please don't use this first line. I'm just showing you what's in the guidelines, but do not use this first line. This actually did reasonably okay. The bottom line is that these are our 4 best friends for now. 1 tablet regimens. Atripla, although alternate. Stribald, preferred. Triumec, preferred. Complera, alternate. We will have at least 1 or 2 more single tablet regimens within the next 6 to 12 months. One of them will be with TAF. Does everybody know what TAF is? TAF is the son of tenofovir, right? TAF is tenofovir alafenamide, and I'm not going to show you slides on that. I don't know how much to put in because I want to stay on track also. It's 6:10. Okay, moving on. This came out in January. This is Evotaz, which is evolution of Reataz, atazanavir plus cobacistat. So this is boosted Reataz, but instead of Norvir, there is cobacistat. Same day that this came out, Prescovix came out, January 29th. This is a combination of darunavir plus cobacistat. So boosted Prezista, but instead of boosting it with Norvir, they're boosting it with cobacistat, which is a P450 inhibitor. Exactly the same thing. Everybody still with me? So the choices are increasing. We have more choices. So let's see. Okay. I'm going to cut to the chase here in the interest of time. What does this mean to all of you? K103N. I know David talked about it last time, right? He talked about, anybody?
Is it?
And you don't have to remember it. I think that's a waste of our brain space to try and remember mutations. I never do. But the point is that you cannot ignore it. This means this person has resistance to nevirapine, which is called Viramune, and efavirenz, which is Sustiva. This person should never get Sustiva, should never get Atripla, should never get Viramune. Okay? This is what the genotype looks like. Did David show you genotypes last time? He might have. I'm guessing he did. But this is the K103N. With the K103N, you become completely resistant to efavirenz and nevirapine. Etravirine is also called what? Anybody? It's called Intellence, right? Intellence is not affected by K103. But if you add E138A, then it takes a little bit of a ding. So there are these nuances. So I'm going to whiz through a few slides, 10 more minutes. Consequences of ongoing viral replication. What happens is when somebody continues to have viral replication, in the face of a failing regimen, they will develop more and more mutations that are resistant. Let's assume, and I think David showed you this slide, and you might have all seen it. This is the wild type of virus, okay? You give the drug, you kill this virus. This virus is multiplying millions of times a day. If you kill the wild type of virus, which has no mutations, it gives the ability to the drug-resistant virus to become the predominant virus in the blood. So, Brittany, if you're still there, we might have to mute
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll work on it, yeah.
Thank you. Why do people fail regimens? The biggest reason nowadays is lack of adherence, right? Nowadays, our regimens are superb, that there is no reason somebody should fail. What do you do with viral loads of 50 and 60 copies? Well, if it is a 50 copy or 100 copies per mil, and up until recently the person is fully detectable, do nothing. On the other hand, if this person has a long history of non-compliance and his viral load is somewhere in between 48 and less than 200, don't panic. More than 200, you need to start considering resistance. Again, don't panic. All you do is you call the person back. So supposing somebody's undetectable for 2 years, and then you do a viral load, it's 56 copies, and they are doing fine, nothing has changed, don't bother. But if their viral load is 280 copies or 400 copies per mil, in that case, call them back. Make sure your nurse calls them, and she talks to them and says, take your medicines, we'll call you back in 3 to 4 weeks' time for a repeat viral load and a genotype. And if everything is good, the viral load is undetectable, you don't have to worry about it. So less than 200, probably not do anything. More than 200, call back and monitor sooner than you would. But if somebody's undetectable, nowadays we don't see patients for 6 months at a time. Don't ever stop treatment until, supposing somebody goes into the hospital with a bowel perforation and they cannot take PO meds. Well, that's fine. Or they're going to have a complicated surgery and they need to be NPO, that's fine. But don't electively stop meds, because there were multiple studies that came out about, I think, 4, 5, 6 years ago, Staccato, and then there was another one, there were 2 studies that came out back to back that showed that, and I think it was a SMART study, that showed that if you interrupt treatment, you make the prognosis worse. General principles are add at least 2 fully active drugs. Always use PIs. And the PIs we don't use nowadays are, we don't use Lexiva, we don't use Activus, which is Tipranavir. We use mainly Darunavir and Reataz. You may use Kaletra if you really want to, but it's 4 pills and more GI and lipid side effects. We rarely use Lexiva, which is Fosamprenavir. We haven't used Sequinavir, etc. for a long time. Resistance testing, and I think David went over all these with you. Resistance testing should be done while the patient is on treatment. Don't do it when they're off treatment. If you do it when they're off treatment, take that with a grain of salt and repeat it when they're on treatment. Integrase inhibitors testing at baseline is currently not recommended. However, that might change. So what is the deal? What is the transmitted resistance? Supposing you get somebody who's newly diagnosed and gay man, multiple partners, and he comes in and he has HIV, and you do a genotype on him. What is the likelihood that this person is going to have resistance acquired? The transmitted resistance rate has been fairly constant between around 5 to 15, 16%. The commonest resistant variant that is seen is in the NNRTIs, the K103. The least common is protease inhibitors, and multi-class resistance is less than 5%. This is a database of 27 countries that looked at transmitted resistance. This is in Europe and Sub-Saharan Africa. Their transmitted resistance was slightly lower than the US, about 9%. And PI resistance went down and NNRTI resistance went up. Interesting study that just came out last year, 2 years ago, showed that even, we expect that patients who are treated will have resistant variants. This was a Swiss study that looked at looked at resistant variants, and most of the resistant viruses were circulated by untreated individuals. So once again, we come back to that same thing: treatment as prevention. We talk about treatment for the person, but in HIV, in hepatitis C, in STDs, we do treatment as prevention to spread a resistant virus, prevention to prevent the transmission of HIV. You all know what the genotype is, and you all know what the phenotype is. Any questions on the? Anyway, I won't. I'm going to carry on in the interest of time. It's 6:19. I'm looking at the clock, Brittany. Don't worry. I'm making sure I stay on track. But genotyping looks at drug resistance mutations, and I'll show you some examples. And phenotype looks at the ability of the virus to grow in various concentration of drugs. If any of you have gone to the microbiology lab, in the microbiology lab, they have the Kirby-Bauer plates where they take the culture and they put little discs of the antibiotic. The same principle is with HIV, where you see if the virus can grow in the presence of drug. And how much drug it needs is how you calculate the IC50 ratio. How do we identify mutation? M184V. M is the wild type of amino acid. V is the substitution at position 184 in the HIV virus. It's as simple as that. I'm going to skip over some of this, but just to let you know, the commonest mutation that we will see will be the M184V. Okay? Anybody who has been on Epivir, which is in Epsicom, or emtricitabine, which is in Truvada, anybody on these drugs can develop the M184. And this is the prevalence. In 2010, M184V went down from 44 to 19%. So this is 2003, this is 2010. So you can see that resistant variants are going down, but still very common. I'm going to skip over some of these slides. One thing I think I want to point out is that not all mutations are bad. Some mutations are actually good for the human. And how is that? Well, let's take this. M184V, which is the commonest mutation, decreases the effect that 3TC or FTC will have on the virus by almost 100-fold. It also decreases the effect that abacavir or DDI will have. However, M184V increases the effect that Truvada or tenofovir will have on the virus. It increases the effect of AZT, and it reduces viral fitness. So not all mutations are bad. Some mutations increase susceptibility to other drugs, and mutations also have this concept of reducing viral fitness. Viral fitness is how fit the virus is to grow and multiply. Because the virus has a mutation, it is not the fittest of viruses, and because of that, you reduce viral fitness by almost 50%. So these are little nuances in mutations. Have you all heard of TAMs? TAMs are thymidine analog mutations. They used to be seen with zidovudine or AZT. These are the big TAMs. I'm going to skip over some of these. I want you to just pay attention to this a little bit. If you have this mutation, the K65R, you have reduced the effect of tenofovir. But if you have K65R plus a couple of TAMs. TAM is a thymidine analog mutation. These ones. These are the TAMs. If you have 2 or 3 of these, plus a K65R, then the tenofovir is likely useless. So tenofovir is a superb drug, but with the K65R and with a couple of these, tenofovir unfortunately becomes useless. Just remember that. This is a bad resistance genotype. Can you see that? This person is in big trouble. He has number of reverse transcriptase mutations, and I won't talk about, have you heard of the Q151? This is a multi-class. This knocks off the whole class. Then you have multiple PI mutations. Look at this. But I think in today's day and age, with the integrase inhibitors, with the CCR5 inhibitors, there is a possibility that we can get this person with this horrendous genotype undetectable as long as we use our drugs wisely. Just a couple of more slides. In patients where you are running out of options, consider adding a CCR5 inhibitor like Maraviroc or Cellzentry. But before you add Maraviroc, you must do a co-receptor tropism assay. Because what Maraviroc does is it blocks the CCR5 inhibitor. Now, if your patient has a virus that is mainly CCR5 tropic, and that's what a Trophile looks like. If the patient has a virus that is R5 tropic, Maraviroc will work. On the other hand, if the patient is dual mixed or is X4, that means the patient has now got a virus that is predominantly got an X4 receptor, then Maraviroc will not work. So in patients who are failing treatment, use integrase inhibitors, do a Trophile assay to see if they have CCR5, if the virus is CCR5 tropic, because then you could potentially use Maraviroc. Last couple of slides, these are superb. Like I showed you at the beginning, the DHHS and other people are now pushing these to the top of the pyramid. We do not currently do integrase inhibitor resistance checking at baseline in everybody. When you order a genotype in a person who's either failing treatment or starting treatment, do a regular genotype. But if they've had integrase inhibitors and they are failing, you must do this. This was a study that was published out of UNC not too long ago, and they found in 3,294 sequences, the integrase inhibitor resistance was about 15.6%. So that's quite high, but most of these patients were treated with integrase inhibitors already. So treatment naive patients who've never seen integrase inhibitors, it is much lesser. I think in the next 3-4 years, we will find that doing baseline integrase inhibitor resistance testing will become routine, because the more we use, the more there will be resistant virus in the community, and the more we'll see it. But this is in a patient population that was being treated with integrase inhibitors. These are some of the mutations with integrase inhibitors.